social distancing and to mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We will conduct this meeting like in-person meetings. Commissioners, during roll call, please indicate your current location. Also during the meeting, please remain on camera, just as you would be visible during in-person meetings. And finally, please mute your microphone when not speaking. But for public comment, that will be conducted via telephone only. So to speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call one of the following two toll-free numbers, 877-853-5247 or 888-788-0099 and enter the meeting ID number 956-8718-7876 on your phone. This information is also available on the published agenda in the public notices section of the city website. On the broadcast of this meeting on CTN channel 16, AT&T channel 99, and online at a2gov.org/watchctn. At this time, we're ready for the land acknowledgement. So Joe, would you please read it?
Yep. I acknowledge that the land the city of Ann Arbor occupies is the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe and Wyandot peoples. I further acknowledge that our city stands, like almost all property in the United States, on lands obtained, generally in unconscionable ways, from indigenous peoples. The taking of this land was formalized by the Treaty of Detroit in 1807. Knowing where we live, work, study, and recreate does not change the past, but a thorough understanding of the ongoing consequences of this past can empower us in our work to create a future that supports human flourishing and justice for all individuals.
Thank you, Joe. All right. Again, I'd like to state that John Mirsky, Chair Mirsky, will not be present in tonight's meeting. He's traveling on vacation, his family. And so, Joe, could you please take the roll call?
Yep. And as Vice Chair Colvin Garcia stated, please state where you are as you affirm you're here. Commissioner Maycomer.
I'm here and joining from my house in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Levin said they will not be present today. Councilmember Briggs.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Redina is not present. Commissioner McCoy is not present. Commissioner Kerber.
Present from here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Overbeck.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Smith.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Conan.
Present and calling in from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Zittelman.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner McKenna.
Hi, present, calling from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Harp.
Here in my home in Ann Arbor.
And Commissioner Berkowitz.
Here from my home in Ann Arbor as well.
All right, and then I see Councilmember Redina is in the waiting room, so let me promote him real quick. We're just doing roll call, so Councilmember Redina.
I'm here in Ann Arbor. Sorry for joining late.
All good. Back to you, Vice Chair.
All righty. At this time, we are at the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as posted? Right. And a second? Okay, Commissioner Harp. So Redina and Harp. Next. Okay. Approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as posted? Raise your hand if you want to propose changes or discussion issue, or if not, then just, does anyone have any changes they'd like to propose, first of all? Oh, all right. So seeing no, suggestions, requests for changes? Can you have a motion to approve the minutes? Thank you. Councilmember Briggs and seconded by Commissioner Conan. Hope I got that pronunciation right. Great. So at this point in time, we have an opportunity for public input. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. If you are watching on CTN, please call 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 and enter the meeting ID 956-871-87876. This information is also displayed on the meeting agenda and video feed. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. To electronically raise your hands to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comment.
Caller ending in 340.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Lauren Sargent, speaking on behalf of Washtenaw 350. I live at 2815 Ember Way in Ann Arbor. We are pleased to see an update on the proposed DTE landfill solar project on tonight's agenda. We have followed this proposal over several years and recognize that staff have invested a lot of time and effort in crafting a bargain. However, in the interim, much has changed. The project is currently on hold due primarily to cost considerations and supply chain issues. This may be a blessing in disguise. Under the terms of the current agreement, DTE will be recovering costs from the city and residents of Ann Arbor and Pittsfield Township. DTE, however, will own the project, allowing them to profit directly and acquire green bragging rights. We are currently awaiting the results of the feasibility study for several mechanisms and paths to facilitate Ann Arbor's road to achieving our 2030 renewable energy goals, including a municipal electric utility. Giving over the only large plot of land in the city suitable for a solar farm to DTE for a solar installation needlessly limits our options a priori. Under the new Federal Inflation Reduction Act, cities are now eligible for the 30% federal investment tax credits for solar for the first time. Further, the city with our AAA plus bond rating can already finance such a project at much lower interest rates than DTE. Taken together, this drastically changes the financial equation. It is our understanding that under the current partnership agreement, DTE will get the lion's share of the benefits from this project while closing off some of our best pathways to 100% renewable energy by 2030. Under the IRA, we would now qualify for direct federal subsidies to pay for construction of a solar installation on our landfill. Why wouldn't we take this opportunity to change course, or at the very least, reevaluate, particularly as the project is now on hold? We have
30
been
seconds.
handed a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Let's use it wisely and well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller ending in 334. Caller ending in 334 should have permission to speak. right, we're gonna loop back, going to caller 228.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. My name is Greg Woodring, and I am the president of Ann Arbor for Public Power. I'm calling in similar to the previous caller, excited about the potential of an update on the solar landfill project. I was under the impression Dr. Stoltz will be able to provide this update. And we in Ann Arbor for Public Power have been following this quite closely as well. Given Dr. Stoltz's update at the previous Energy Commission meeting that the project is currently on hold due to cost overruns, we would really like to see the city potentially consider re-examining how we are approaching this deal. Certainly, we acknowledge that city staff has put a tremendous amount of time and effort into this project, and we absolutely would like to see it constructed. The landfill site is probably the city's best possible site to build solar within the city limits, and it absolutely should be done. However, the current arrangement does leave a lot to be desired. Currently, the way, while DTE would be financing the project, the cost would be entirely on either city residents or the city, thus passing the cost on to residents again through taxes. This is because the cost of the debt service on the debt that DTE would be taking out to build the project would be covered in the form of credits that consumers could opt into, and any overrun credits that aren't opted into by residents would be guaranteed to be purchased by the city. This means that residents would be able to claim to be using the renewable energy. However, that is simply an accounting factor. In actuality, DTE will be providing these people with the same power that they provide everybody else. And since it is an additional credit that they are paying on their bill, they're still paying for the entirety of the fossil fuel infrastructure. Instead, they're just simply paying additional to build this facility. So in effect, Ann Arbor is already paying the cost of building this facility. However, at the end of it, Ann Arbor is not going to own it. Given that this is a revenue generating asset, we are essentially just subsidizing, in fact, paying entirely for a project that is going to make DTE money.
30 seconds.
I understand. Thank you so much. I would certainly just like to see this be brought up as a future item to consider. Maybe looking at this deal again, since now with the IRA, the city can take advantage of the tax credits, meaning that the primary advantage of doing this to the private market is eliminated. So thank you very much. Ann Arbor Public Power would love to be in contact with the rest of the Energy Commission and would be willing to present on this. We have a proposal that we'll be sending to all of you shortly. So thank you for your time. Looking forward to an exciting discussion tonight.
Thank you. Caller ending in 245.
Yes, my name is Kathleen Murphy. I live at 315 Linda Vista Street in the 5th Ward. I'd like to comment also on the landfill. The proposed Ann Arbor landfill solar project is a 20 megawatt solar installation on roughly 70 acres at the site of the Cap City landfill on the corner of Ellsworth and Platte Roads. The 20 megawatts could almost exactly meet city government's total power requirement and are equivalent to about 4.5% of Ann Arbor community's overall power demand. The site is the only one owned by the city that's suitable for such a large-scale renewable power installation. The landfill project is a critically important renewable energy initiative, and we commend the city staff who have worked for it diligently and creatively for many years. Under the terms of the current partnership with DTE, DTE is recovering all its costs from the city and its residents, yet will fully own the project. This is not an equitable arrangement and severely limits the city's options for future use of the site. The city should consider building operating and owning the landfill solar project without DTE. The Inflation Reduction Act makes municipalities eligible for the first time for the federal investment tax credit for solar projects. That credit is now 30%. The city can finance the project at more favorable rates than DTE. If financed and built in phases and single distribution lines gradually installed, the electricity can be directed to city facilities, first to the wastewater treatment plant, then later to other high-demand city government users. The city could eventually provide landfill solar-generated electricity to community customers under an SEU or other municipal utility. I suggest that the next Energy Commission meeting looks into this topic more thoroughly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Caller ending in 228.
I think that you came back to the wrong caller. This is Greg again.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, I am seeing no other hands.
Okay, seeing no other hands, we move on to our next agenda item, which is the discussion on our 2023 priorities. The format for tonight's working session will be just literally a discussion of all of the topics that were put forth and that we all have received from Joe. And we're going to force rank the topics, essentially just taking the list. We're going to go through it and allow commissioners to briefly present the commissioners. I don't know, Joe, you and I, between the two of us, we can coordinate how folks are going to be talking about each of the topics, the proposed topics, and then we'll have an opportunity to vote on them. And then we'll sum up from there. So going on, Joe, do you want to read them out, or would you like to sum them up? Basically, we have 16 topics of interest. We have typically, so we will have approximately 10 meetings next year, assuming that we have one working session and a month off, like we did this year. And during our Energy Commission meetings, we have been covering between 1 and 3 topics per session, depending on the topic. So considering that, we can have, we can possibly fit all of the topics that have been presented, depending on the depth that we take them to. So, all right, I'll hand it off to you, Joe. Oh, yes, Claire.
Sorry to interrupt here. I didn't receive the document. Did it come through email from Joe?
Joe sent an email letting us know that he had posted it on Legistar.
Okay.
So if you want to go through the agenda, you can click. There's a live link to it. Anybody else have any questions? All right, Joe.
Yeah. Like I said, it was attached in the agenda, but to quickly go over what they were, there's again more information there if you're looking for more of a breakdown on some of them, and we'll have a chance to have people who just suggested and also others to chat about it. But a couple things on the Inflation Reduction Act, mostly around how it can be best used by the city and how we can encourage residents to take advantage of the offerings in it. Had some stuff on looking at alternative ways of providing power to Ann Arbor that could be outside of the traditional utility structure and outside of other options proposed, such as municipalization or the SEU. Some talked on district geothermal, including microgrids with geothermal, an update and conversation on support of green rental housing as it goes forward. looking at different ways to incentivize all electric new construction, including in discussions with the planning committee and others. Bulk buy of various things that would be in support of electrification, weatherization, and energy efficiency for homes and buildings in Ann Arbor. Conversation on the landfill solar project, updates, seeing what's happening, and discussing ways to move forward. Updates on the energy concierge, both the in-person and virtual options that have been discussed. Some talk on the climate millage that was recently passed, talking about plans for spending and how it'll be used. Discussion on looking at hydropower at Ann Arbor owned dams, which I will note previously had reached out to folks and this, or tentatively could take place in February, if that is still what you are all interested in. Discussion on the feasibility study once it is complete and presented. So talking through what is in there, the recommendations, and taking that information and making decisions off of it. Going further into EV charging at multifamily units. Looking into additional mitigation and adaptation strategies that either are currently being looked at or thinking about new things that could be looked at. Going further into how we are reporting out on the A20 plan's progress, including having more transparent and more real-time options for people to, kind of see what is happening as we're moving forward on our goals. Going into transportation electrification, looking at a couple different options that can, including the bus system, different transit, and a little bit anything and everything there. And then there was some talk in the past about having someone out to talk about U of M's Scope 3 procurement study, and having some of the people out to discuss what they're doing there to kind of better inform what we are doing as a city. Those are things I got. Like I said, there's more information in the file that was attached to the agenda. But if anyone has any other questions, I can answer those. Otherwise, back to you, Vice Chair, to delve into discussion.
All right, so our first run of questions or comments. Yes, Councilmember Briggs.
Thanks. I just wanted to, I guess, follow up on how you introduced this, in that we might, since there are 10 meetings and we can have more than one topic per meeting, we might be able to cover all of these items. Is there a need to vote on which ones we want to cover over the next year, just before we kind of go into that phase, just the rationale behind kind of prioritizing these? Maybe it's just the sequence of which by which we might, approach them. But
yeah, I will note on my end, at least, I'm more than fine with whatever works for all of you. Some of the stuff, just because I know the rationale from some of the previous was the things that are more important were getting discussed earlier on. Some of the things that are in there are kind of just by, at least from the OSI side, are kind of going to be limited to when stuff kind of happens. For instance, with more discussion on like the feasibility study, we can't say much about it until there is the feasibility study findings. So some of these things that are in here can certainly be earlier or later, just kind of depending when, again, it is most relevant. But I know in the past it was kind of by whatever topics had the most interest were the ones kind of talked about sooner. So I'm fine either way, but whatever works best for you all in determining what kind of priorities you want to focus on and when you want to focus on them.
Commissioner Overpeck.
Hi, thanks. I think we're really talking about putting things in order of importance, things that need to get moved first, and what ones maybe can wait. And I think we need to just build in a clause then for the sustainability office. They have to actually be able to prepare and in some cases do some analysis, I reckon. But the IRA is the one, and utilization of the IRA strikes me as the most important one to do as soon as we can. with those constraints, simply because it's offers potentially a lot of resources that the city could use. And we better understand how to go about that. But I don't know how we would get the basis for our discussion. You know, either the office has to do it or we have to bring in a real expert. And I would just to keep from overworking the office, I would think it would be really great to bring in a real expert and have the office do it too, perhaps, so we really don't mess up and lose out on some resources that could really make a difference for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Overpeck. Commissioner McKenna.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to add on to what Commissioner Overpeck was saying and just share that I've actually seen some of these expert presentations on the IRA so far. I'm just kind of being in the built environment space as a former professional and currently in research. And folks positioned as experts, they don't really know how the money is going to be distributed. Like, I think we know enough about, there's been some, some nice write-ups and maybe some initial thoughts on how this might take shape. But for instance, I've heard that Eagle, who is going to be distributing the funds, won't know exactly how that's going to happen, maybe until the spring. And so unfortunately, although we want to have access to the money in January 2023, like it's written in the bill, that may not be the case. So I just wanted to share that.
That's very informative. Thank you so much, Commissioner McKenna. Commissioner Hart.
Thank you. One of the things that I was looking at in the proposed items was perhaps some of the ways in which some of the areas are related in terms of the topics of discussion and how they might be bundled together. And so in particular, some of the areas of municipalization, the feasibility study, and whether it's the solar landfill project or the Argo Dam, or what have you, those at least appear to be sort of similar topics. Also, with respect to the update on the concierge, the Inflation Reduction Act and the Green Rental Housing Program, all dealing with sort of the sort of service design and the information and sort of engagement of residents or building owners around options that they might have. So I was just trying to think about some of the ways in which we might think about the ordering and how we make sense of what some of the insights that we might learn about these are and how we can help them build upon each other.
That's a really good observation. And I was looking at it from that angle as well. And I think it would be worth actually, taking a stab at us as a group, or if it's just like a subgroup wants to like get together and provide your bundled perspectives, like what you would put in the different little buckets, so to speak, and like how we can approach that. And maybe it could be a phased explorations for this. Anyone else? Commissioner McKenna.
Thanks. Just a brief comment. I wanted to mention that a planning commissioner reached out to me this month directly after their meeting last week, and wanted to talk about the zoning ordinance on the, I don't like the word ban, but the end of use of fossil fuels in new construction. And so that seems really pressing. I have to admit, I don't know what the outcome of that planning commission meeting was, but I'd love to either have an update or just maybe have a meeting of the minds between the planning commission and our group to make sure that we're aligned, or at least informing each other.
So like prioritizing as far as timing is concerned?
Yeah, it seems pressing, just given that it's been on their agenda, and both someone from the planning commission reached out to me, and actually a citizen also reached out to me. So for what, we want to make sure that if it's on these minds, then maybe we're also treating it with priority.
Okay. All right.
I'll note as for timing, I believe they're having they postponed voting on their recommendation until I think it was March, and they're going to be having a working session in February to frame people's thoughts on timing.
So then February, then we could put a placeholder on that. Okay, we have one topic in 1 month as a placeholder. If you want to maybe coordinate, if that's something that we can arrange for both commissions to meet together, if they would be open for that. And then we can move forward.
Yeah, I can reach out to like Brett is their staff liaison. So,
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Commissioner Briggs, or sorry, Councilmember Briggs.
Thanks. Yeah, I would just wanted to second that. I think this is hugely consequential for the city, and how we roll it out, should it pass, is also there are interests, as you can imagine, from a lot of different sectors around this, and council is already beginning to hear about it. So I think making sure that we are taking very deliberative steps and very informed steps as we move forward makes a lot of sense, and doing as much collaboration as possible, and understanding what questions are not answered yet, and what information that we need to move this forward in our own community is really important. And then in terms of other priorities, I would say the climate millage, which passed, I would say that early on, we probably want to have a really strong understanding before the budget cycle about what the recommendations are for how that funding will be spent, certainly in the next couple of years, since this is a biennial budget, but also kind of a longer term approach as well. I think we're going to need, this is a 20-year millage, and so it's a great vote of confidence from the community to do this, but that it just means that we need to be very thoughtful and, again, deliberate in how we spend these funds.
So as far as the budget process, Councilmember Briggs, what are the months that we're looking at, and what would you recommend that we schedule for discussion on this topic?
Yeah, I defer to staff in terms of how they're pulling together the budget stuff, but I would guess that maybe March might be the right time frame for them.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Councilmember Radina.
Thanks. I just wanted to draw Joe's attention. I think Commissioner McCoy is over in the attendees trying to join.
thank you.
Thanks for letting us know. All right, anybody else? So, okay, just a quick recap. Okay, let me just ask you, Commissioner McKenna, based on what you're learning, when will the information about the IRA be more available, or be beginning to be made available?
I've heard through Eagle that it's more like March, but we might want to stay flexible in case they get themselves together and have more information before that. But I think OSI is probably tracking that pretty closely. Joe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe we can just leave that as a floater for early spring, and be able to prioritize it if there's more information.
Yeah, we're in a very similar spot. Spring would probably be earliest. Some of the other stuff we just don't know is kind of it. Like if we were talking about it, January, February, it would largely be the same discussion we're having right now of not really sure. We have the broad outlines of how stuff are, but some of the stuff, like a lot of the direct rebates have to flow from federal to state. So the state has to figure out how they're setting everything up. It has to be approved. Then they get the money, then they can disperse it. So it could be even later for when that money's actually flowing in. But once that general framework is known, we can chat about it in anticipation of it. Similar for some of the stuff that would be funding directly to local governments, for instance. Like, again, we know it is outlined there, but we don't exactly still know the system in place for how those funds would be deposited to local governments such as ourselves. So late spring, early summer is probably, from our current guess, probably the earliest we could talk about it. ideally it would be sooner, but kind of in the state/federal hands at the moment for figuring all that out.
Okay, all right. Is there something that you wanted to add to this, Commissioner Smith?
Yes, just kind of building off of Councilmember Briggs' comments and understanding kind of the climate millage, funding and how that may be allocated. Would also like to propose that we prioritize A2 plan progress, kind of real-time reporting and transparency. I think a lot of the topics mentioned here kind of fall within actions under that A20 plan. And so to the extent that we can understand kind of at that deeper action level, where we're at, where we may be falling short, and where, we might want to think about solutions on kind of how to make up for some of those shortfalls, I think would be very helpful. And think about kind of, how can we post again at that action level, real-time reporting on how we're doing. And, perhaps that would also inform, how certain funds should be allocated to better support kind of reaching that carbon neutrality goal.
So I just want to make sure that I understand as far as how the transparency and the real-time reporting fits in with the climate millage. Are you suggesting that we meet early to offer framework or format suggestions for the transparency? Is that what you're
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think overall that it might help, understanding kind of where we're at, where we might want to reprioritize any of the topics that we have on this list. Should it be transportation electrification? Should it be building efficiency? Because now we have a deeper understanding of kind of where we're at overall with the plan.
So let me ask you this, Joe. If let's say we're targeting March to convene and have a discussion on the climate millage and offering suggestions to council, would OSI be able to give us information about progress on A20 so far, including, the hurdles that we've been facing and, the challenges, and so that we can see what there is and what there isn't, and begin to work on what we can recommend?
Yeah, I know we're currently working through a couple web-based stuff, trying to figure out how to have more of that real-time reporting. Some of it's kind of just in various phases of figuring out what we can and can't do on our website, just technology capacity wise. And that's kind of where the holdup is at the moment. I want to say by March we would have more information on that, or at the very least kind of saying here's where we're at with it and some of the limitations we have. And so starting to think about how we can move forward with either continuing on a path or thinking through different options to kind of get that regular cadence out there. So I believe that's feasible. I would just need to check with the people working directly on that to confirm. But in terms of millage and everything like that, that should be more than fine. I know we have the end of this week, we have our big strategy sessions for getting all the big guiding vision out there. In addition to what you see on the website, that was that kind of budget in there. It will stick very closely to that, just because that's what was presented before the voters. So that's a good general sense. But yeah, we're going into the bigger vision of how to start distilling that into specific programs. It's already been being done. We're having a full team work this week. And then we'll be getting everything more operationalized, and March would be just fine.
All right. And so barring the ability to actually have a public presentation on the web, are there going to be just reports available, narrative laid down with metrics and what's been put in place so far, with complete mapping onto the strategy? Is that going to be available?
We're trying to move further than that, kind of have data dashboards, things like that, so you can kind of see more real-time data and just be more than just a report that comes out once a year. again, we're just trying to figure out what we have the technical capacity to with our existing website, as well as looking at other options that could potentially fit within our framework and the city's framework that we have for us web-wise.
Okay. All right. Thanks. All right, anybody else? So. All right, so you've looked at the electrification, you've looked at federal funding, the IRA, we've looked at the climate millage so far that we want to address. It'd be great if we can have also like the electrification in terms of like timing with the Planning Commission. I just want to make sure including that as well. As far as the solar landfill, is that something that there's information available at this point in time? Joe?
I don't have anything outside of what Missy has previously talked about. I can, if that's something that we want to prioritize having a, bigger discussion on sooner rather than later, we can work to address that and kind of have something for you and kind of give an update. But as far as what I'm aware of, we're in the kind of similar holding pattern at the moment.
Okay. I'm just looking over the list right now real quick here. Where are we, do you know what the green rental housing?
Yeah,
Seems like we're so close to moving forward with this.
Yeah, one thing to note is the way things were structured. Green rental housing is slated to be after HURD, which we heard from Zach about recently. So HURD will go before green rental housing. So that's kind of the timeline of it. Green rental housing overall, a lot of the framework kind of there is more or less set. We're working through a couple of different options, including looking externally at getting help finalizing the checklist portion of it to best allocate points to make sure they're grounded in strong building science, to make sure that it's both effective and usable for landlords, as well as actually making the type of difference we would want in accordance with our A20 goals. The goal for that would be to hopefully have that part at least finalized by early spring, kind of thinking March, end of March being there. At which point, once that checklist is there, having everything going back out to the task force, who was originally part of it, as well as continuing the community engagement with the various affected interests. So, sometime, of course, this kind of depends on where HURD is at with things, but sometime late spring, early summer, like just based on the planning would be a good spot. Might be flexibility depending if something goes awry here or there, but that seems feasible.
Okay, so basically it should be like ready early spring, and then depending on where HURD is, then it can go afterwards, after that. And so we'd have to kind of time it that way. All right, okay. And then the one placeholder that we do have that you mentioned was about the hydropower, to have somebody come and speak in February, right?
Yep. But if the way timing works out with Planning Commission wanting to do some things, I think their meetings are the same day as ours. So if that'd be a feasibility for their February work session, we can adjust that as needed.
All right. Okay. So it looks like we have a good plan for the beginning of the year, the first 3 or 4 months of the year. And then John and Joe and I can get together and then and schedule the other topics Is there anything else anyone, I mean, it seems like we're making amazing progress here. Is there anything else anyone wants to say or ask about or suggest? Okay. Councilmember Zittelman. Sorry, Commissioner.
Wonder about timing for the solar landfill project, discussing potential changes of course. Since I guess OSI is in the holding pattern right now, I wonder how long do you expect to maintain that holding pattern for us to have a conversation in the future about that before we start making steps forward on, another path? That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on my end, so I'm definitely gonna have to check and get back to you. I know, again, part of it, like we kind of said, IRA and such, some of it's tied to that, where, as people calling in have mentioned, there are incentives, rebates there for local governments, but again, we just don't know what that structure is to make enough of a decision to really say what it is. Other parts of it are just the overall cost, which is stuff that we are still looking into. But I can check back and get a better answer for you.
Thanks, Joe. All right, Commissioner Hart.
I was just wondering about the timing of the update on the energy concierge services relative to some of the other programs that might be rolling out, whether it's information about inflation reduction or other bulk buys or other things like that, in terms of helping capitalize to some extent on some of the excitement and energy around some of these things, to be able to understand how the scope of those services perhaps might be able to tie into helping residents, building owners, and others understand how to make most effective use of some of these other programs.
Excellent question, and that can be used as a topic that we can consider. Do you have like a quick little update on that, Joe, about the energy concierge?
Yeah, I was gonna say it in the OSI report out, but this works just fine. Works better even. So it's currently in the pilot phase. We're working with Elevate and EcoWorks as contractors. They're getting ready to start recruiting people for the pilot. So trying to get a bunch of different use cases to kind of see, both different types of buildings, different types of participants, different types of, trying to get as many uses as we can to see how it works best for as many people, as many buildings, as many financial situations as possible. The pilot projects are going to be starting in the spring, and it's slated to be completed with a report to the city by the end of June. So if we want to talk just, broadly about kind of the things that should be thought about, that can obviously kind of happen at any point in time. They are thinking about all those different things and are going to be part of the pilot. But if we want to have like the most informed discussion, it would be, probably better once that report is kind of out, so we can kind of look through the report, see what worked, see what didn't. So it would kind of just depend on what type of conversation you want that to be.
Is there a way that we can look at the pilot or so that we can know if there's anything we want to suggest, even though they might be considering everything, is there any way that we can just see how they're structuring it and what kind of information they're going to be, how they're going to be providing the information they're going to be providing?
Yeah, I can check with Julie Roth. She's leading that from the city side. Yeah, so we can check in to see either, if we want to do a, smaller update early on, kind of seeing all that and kind of having that discussion, and then discuss further once the report, we can certainly do so. But I will check in to see what would be helpful on that end.
All right. And you said that the report's going to be out in the spring then?
The pilot will be taking place in the spring. The report will be by the end of June.
And okay, the report will be at the end of June. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you for that update. Commissioner Berkowitz.
I want to say thank you to everybody. My thoughts have already been captured by a lot of what the other commissioners and council members have said so far. So I haven't felt the need to speak up. But one thing I did want to lift up that I haven't heard yet is, and kind of following the context of at our last commission meeting, we heard presentations from DTE about their voluntary green pricing programs. One thing I was thinking about is DTE just recently filed a integrated resource plan. There was also a decision around their electric rate case. There might be new rate cases or voluntary green pricing cases next year. And so I was thinking that, potentially our audience and, us as a commission might be interested in learning more about some of the work that the city is doing at the Public Service Commission to hold our utility accountable, and maybe even take a victory lap on some of the victories they've had through the commission in the past, negotiating legal settlements that opened up new pilots around community energy projects, or low income projects and things of that nature. That would be less urgent, by the way, on the kind of time scale. The integrated resource plan in particular, the Public Service Commission will be issuing its initial decision in August of 2023. So there's plenty of time. The commission accepts public comment essentially as long as the case is open. So there's no urgency on that topic.
So basically to add a discussion and an update on the IRP, and then also to add kind of a recap of the success that that we've had in the realm with working with DTE, or
yeah, in the realm of the Public Service Commission.
Okay, MPSC. All right.
Exactly. And maybe what future opportunities or, upcoming opportunities exist other than, I just named the IRP because that's the thing I've been thinking about most, but there might be other things that, Missy or others are paying attention to that, we'd like to learn about or could be cool opportunities.
Okay. Yeah. Joe and I were talking about including in our January meeting a recap of the work that we've done this year, the successes we have had, the challenges we faced, and what we're working with as we begin the next year. So we can include that in it. And so if you wouldn't mind, maybe you can just kind of send us a little recap, and we can include that in our next meeting during that part of our agenda in January.
I'd be happy to. Perfect. Thank you.
Anyone else? Joe, what do you think moving forward?
As in for the rest of the meeting, or?
Yeah, for our topics and in this consideration.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty content with most of what we've said so far. I am content with what we've said so far. And from my end, at least, the way we've been talking, I don't think we necessarily need to kind of vote and rank through these priorities. It seems like we're in a decent spot. I'm just looking over to see if there's anything on here. A couple of things we haven't talked about. I just wanted to see if anyone wanted to bring up any of their thoughts on, either how it would relate with something else or kind of any thoughts on that. But haven't mentioned the district geothermal, multifamily EV charging, transportation electrification, and some of the studies on scope 3 procurement. So I don't know if anyone wants to say anything or if they're content with where we are, but just wanted to flag those as things that haven't necessarily been discussed yet, one way or the other.
Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on the transportation related side of things. I'm stepping down as liaison to the Transportation Commission, and obviously Transportation Commission focuses a lot on transportation investments and biking and walking. And I know the recently adopted millage will have additional funding for particularly non-motorized work. I do think that when we have gotten the reports, OSI reports on kind of our progress towards our goals. There's often the transportation side of things is a little bit brief in terms of how the progress we're making towards our goals, reducing our trips by 50% by 2030 is a pretty bold initiative for us to have. And so I do think there's going to need to be more coordinated efforts to think about not only the infrastructure that we're developing, but how we prioritize our budgets and our transportation budgets to reflect that work that we're trying to achieve with very limited resources, and what the impact, broadly will be to the city. Transportation is thinking about it through one lens, but I think Energy Commission can think about it through another lens. I think it would probably take a little bit of maybe behind the scenes coordination between transportation, OSI, to make sure that we're not sort of duplicating conversations. I don't necessarily think we need a brainstorming session around all things related to transportation, but thinking about what is the role in Energy Commission to help make sure we're moving forward ambitiously in this area.
Thanks.
That's
And
a
I
very great idea. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to flag for if people are not aware, the whatever their acronym, AATA, the ride, they recently put out they had a zero emissions propulsion study for their buses. There's a big long study and also an executive summary. I believe the time for public comment is already closed on that, but if for those interested, it's worth checking out as it relates to this discussion.
Okay. So, yes, Commissioner McKenna.
Hi, just quickly, I wanted to add that the geothermal micro district or anything related to geothermal should be included with a building electrification discussion. So I don't think that needs to go on its own. It's really tied to getting rid of natural gas.
Makes perfect sense. We'll bundle them. Okay. I have really nothing more to add. Just wanted to quickly ask you real quick, Councilmember Briggs, about your suggestion for the Energy Commission to possibly work together with the Transportation Commission in some way for alignment on the energy part of transportation in the context of meeting the 2030 goals, reducing trips by 50%. Is there like a timeline that the Transportation Commission is working on regarding this, or?
Well, I don't think that they're thinking about it in terms of these they're not necessarily thinking about it in alignment with the 2030 goals. It's more in alignment with rethinking how we want our transportation network to look, and within the lens of the comprehensive transportation plan, which of course does have climate action as a component of it, but it's more based around a Vision Zero approach around reducing deaths and serious accidents. And so that's an important lens to be looking at how we're shifting our transportation environment. And of course, one of the benefits of doing that is we're helping to advance our climate action goals as well. But when we think about it in terms of rapidly also trying to reach our climate action goals and how we actually prioritize our transportation funding in the city, that also becomes important for the next budget cycle. And it also means some pretty tough conversations for our community, I think. So I'm not sure I have an answer to this in terms of, but I just noticed that I think a big portion of the transportation work of this is being left to rightfully so, to the transportation professionals in the city. And yet this is a big part of the work that we're trying to do on our climate action goals. And so I think the Energy Commission could play a bigger role in figuring out what that role is.
Okay.
Probably worse than thought. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is actually quite fascinating, and definitely worth some exploration. So, okay, I'm adding that to the list. And then when you contextualize it inside of the budget cycle for infrastructure work that will be being done and planned and done, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to begin that sooner rather than later. Okay. I have nothing else to add, no other questions. All right. Any last thoughts? No. Okay. Well, would you all say that we call it an early evening? We can go out and enjoy the early night. I'm feeling definitely this year for the first time ever the effect of the really short days. It's very strange. I'm like hungry for more sun right now, like big time. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for your participation.
I will note we have just a couple other items just to whatever bracket out of, you know, the OSI report, news from commissioners, and then one last public input before we adjourn.
Okay. Yes, and thank you for bringing the agenda back in, and let's move forward on our next item, which is the reports. So we have one item on the report that was already addressed. What else would you like to share with us, Joe?
Yeah, and sorry for holding everyone. I know there was the allure of leaving, so I will make this mostly brief. Actually, most of the stuff that was going to be reported kind of was brought up in questions. Like I said, there was the update on the energy concierge of the going into the pilot phase. We'll have a report by the end of June. We also are really diving deep into strategy sessions for the millage. Again, basically what was kind of outlined in that proposed budget that was put as part of the, like before the voters, is largely what it's going to be centered around, but starting to dive into kind of the breakdowns within that. So really putting effort into figuring out all of that. I mentioned it a couple of times, but it's starting to move a bit closer with the Bryant decarbonization work. There was that $500,000 grant from the MSHDA, which is what Michigan State Housing Authority. There's a couple things that are still just being wrapped up in terms of process for how the funding kind of gets from MSHDA to our partner community action network. Anticipating that some of that is starting to better flow in January with projects happening in the spring. So again, be on the lookout for that. Outside of that, we've been doing a couple of just holiday sustainability stuff. You can check out our latest newsletter for some, just general tips and tricks on sustainability on the holidays. And we had a holiday cooking event for focusing on local food and reducing the carbon impacts of the food we eat last Friday, if you want to check that out for a good time. That is what I have, so I'll turn it back to you.
All right. So as regards to the report from the environmental commissioner, Commissioner Mirsky is not here, and so we won't have that. Work group updates, we don't have any current working work groups. And for as far as it applies with committee updates. And now at this point in time, we're back to public input. So as I stated earlier, there's an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. If you're watching on CTN, please call 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 956-8718-7876. This information is also displayed on the meeting agenda and video feed. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. To electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You'll hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comment.
I don't currently have any raised hands, but give it a minute or so here just to make sure.
All right.
All right, I'm still not seeing any raised hands, so back to you.
Great. All right, so we have been discussing this entire meeting items for upcoming agendas. Does anyone have anything like specifically in particular that they would like to discuss for the January agenda? Or an update or that they would like to share, or a story that they'd like to tell, or data they'd like to provide? Okay, hearing none, we will proceed to our final item on the agenda, which is to adjourn. It is now 7:09 according to my clock. And as vice chair, I declare this meeting adjourned. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for your hard work this year. It's been an amazing year.
Thanks. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.